Uh-oh, looks like someone ate too much pizza and spaghetti. That swollen feeling is what we call a food baby.
Imagine a very ordinary afternoon, no accident, no illness, no spoiled food. You're just sitting there, one hand holding your stomach, your head slightly spinning, and a simple but very real question pops into your mind. Why do I suddenly feel like throwing up? The body always starts the story this way. Very small, very subtle. A bit of fullness after a meal, a slight discomfort when you stand up and move around, a strange sensation you try to ignore. Because what's the big deal? People around you are still laughing and talking. The day still seems perfectly fine. But inside, your body is working quietly. You ate more than it could handle at that moment. Too many flavors. Hot, cold, spicy, sweet, mixed together. Your stomach stretches without complaining, without protesting. It just sends a very gentle signal to the brain, like a polite reminder, this is a bit much. Then you move, you run, you jump, you bend down, stand up. The food inside gets shaken around. The inner ear reports that balance is being disturbed. The stomach reports overload. The nerves whisper that things are falling out of rhythm. And that's when the brain, the part we rarely think about, makes a decision. Inside the brain, there's a special area called the vomiting center. It has no emotions, no judgment. It doesn't care where you are or whether it's embarrassing. It does one thing, only protect the body when too many danger signals arrive at once. When those signals cross a threshold, this center gives the order. No negotiation, no delay. The abdominal muscles contract. The diaphragm pushes upward. The stomach squeezes hard. And everything reverses direction. Vomiting is not designed to feel pleasant. It's designed to be fast, to release, to end overload as quickly as possible. What's interesting is this. After vomiting, many people feel better, lighter, less dizzy, less pressure in the stomach, exhausted. Yes, but with the sense that a battle has just ended? That's not because you're weak. It's because your body has just done something very smart. In everyday life, we often try to endure, to suppress, to keep going even after we've passed our limits. Eat a little more. Do one more thing. Stay cheerful a bit longer. But biology doesn't run on willpower. It runs on boundaries. Vomiting, in many cases, is not the enemy. It's the final signal when the body has no other way left to be heard. And maybe the biggest insight here isn't why we vomit, but this: how long has it been since you stopped before your body was forced to stop you? If this video reminded you of a very real moment like that, leave a comment. Not to talk about throwing up, but about the last time your body spoke and whether you listened. If you look a little deeper beneath that layer of discomfort, vomiting is not a chaotic act. It is a reflex, very carefully programmed into human biology, refined over millions of years of evolution, older than language, civilization, or any awareness of saving face. From a scientific perspective, the vomiting center is located in the brainstem, close to the regions that control breathing and cardiovascular function. That fact reveals something brutally clear. Vomiting is prioritized at the same level as survival itself. When this center activates, the body temporarily puts everything else on hold. You cannot try to resist it. Just as you cannot command your heart to stop beating by willpower, this center receives input from three main sources. The first source is the stomach and intestines. When the stomach expands too quickly, when food mixes out of rhythm, or when internal pressure exceeds a threshold, stretch receptors send urgent signals. The important point is this: the food does not need to be toxic or spoiled. Too much, too fast, too mixed is enough. The second source is the inner ear, which controls balance. This is why eating a large meal and then moving vigorously, traveling in vehicles, or rotating the body repeatedly so easily causes nausea. The brain interprets this conflict as a threat. In ancient biological language, loss of balance was often associated with poisoning or neurological disturbance. The brain does not wait for conscious analysis. It chooses the safest option: expel everything. The third source is the central nervous system and emotions. Intense stress, anxiety, fear, or even the memory of a smell or an unpleasant experience can trigger the vomiting reflex. That is why some people feel their stomach churn the moment they smell something familiar. The brain remembers very well what once forced it to stay on guard. The insight lies here. We often think the body is overreacting, but from a biological perspective, the body always reacts economically. Vomiting occurs only when other systems can no longer compensate. It is the final emergency button. In modern life, the problem is not that we vomit more easily. The problem is that we place the body in situations that require the emergency button far more often. Eating in a rush, eating while stressed, drinking carbonated soda to fight fatigue, coffee to stay awake, eating while working, eating while scrolling on a phone. The body is pulled away from its natural rhythm, yet still expected to run smoothly. When you vomit, it is not a failure. It is the moment biology says, "We tried to handle this quietly, but you didn't listen." Many people report that after vomiting, they don't just feel lighter in the stomach, but also clearer. The vague sense of fatigue disappears. That is not an illusion. When visceral pressure drops, the parasympathetic nervous system is reactivated. The body shifts from alert mode into recovery. Vomiting, ultimately, is not meant to teach you fear. It is meant to teach you to recognize limits before they are crossed. And perhaps the most unsettling thought is this: if a crude reflex like vomiting is given such high priority by the brain, how many more subtle signals, persistent fatigue, loss of appetite, unusual drowsiness, low-grade bloating, have we ignored simply because they were not bad enough to stop? The body does not scream right away. It whispers for a long time. Vomiting is only when it is forced to speak loudly. There is one subtle point that science often explains briefly. While real-life experiences stretch it out over time, vomiting rarely comes from a single cause. It is usually the result of many small factors accumulating at the right moment, at the right threshold. Take a very familiar example: a rushed morning. You're not truly hungry, but you drink coffee anyway. An empty stomach, rising acid. At noon, you eat quickly because you're busy, swallowing without chewing properly. Food drops down like an unprepared mass. In the afternoon, tired. You drink a carbonated soda to feel alert. Gas builds up, pressure increases. In the evening, you still push yourself to exercise, to hit the target. Even though your stomach feels heavy and your head slightly dizzy, when your stomach finally starts to churn, you ask yourself, did I eat something wrong? No. What was wrong wasn't a single food. It was how the entire day was assembled. Another common case: children at parties. Not because the food is toxic, but because children are very good at enjoying themselves. They eat when they're excited, stop when they're bored, then eat again when something tastes good. A child's body doesn't yet have the layer of social restraint that adults develop. When overloaded, it reacts immediately. The child vomits. cries a little, then goes back to playing as if nothing happened. Adults watching worry. But biologically, it's very clear the body has just cleaned itself. Another example. More subtle stress-induced vomiting. Some people don't eat anything unusual. Don't eat much. Don't move intensely. Yet before a big meeting, an exam, or bad news, they feel nauseous. The trigger here isn't in the stomach. It's in the nervous system. When stress is prolonged, the brain releases cortisol, altering gut motility and increasing visceral sensitivity. The body is pushed into a must-escape state. Vomiting becomes the fastest exit. There's also a very everyday case that few people notice: vomiting from deep exhaustion. Not tired from heavy labor, but tired from lack of sleep, disrupted routines, irregular meals. The autonomic nervous system loses synchronization. The stomach is no longer smoothly regulated. You feel a vague nausea with no clear reason. This is the body saying, I can't keep the rhythm anymore. What's striking is that in many cases, vomiting appears after you've endured for too long. You ignore fullness, ignore mild nausea, ignore fatigue, until the body has no more subtle options left. The insight is here. Vomiting is not the first reflex. It is the last one. Before it, there are always very small signals: frequent burping, bloating, slight lightheadedness, loss of appetite, shallow breathing, difficulty concentrating. But because they're not serious, we learn to brush them off until biology is forced to choose a rougher way to be noticed. Seen this way, vomiting is no longer frightening in a moral sense. It's not weakness. It's a breakdown in communication between consciousness and the body. And the interesting thing is this: people who listen early tend to vomit less. Not because they are healthier, but because they stop before the emergency button is pressed. The body always gives you many chances to adjust gently. It only becomes extreme when you force it to. There is a very interesting paradox that you won't notice unless you've lived long enough with your own body. Vomiting scares people. But that very fear is what makes us misunderstand it. We are taught from childhood that vomiting is a bad sign, that it means something is wrong, that it must be avoided at all costs. So when nausea appears, the first reflex is not to listen, but to suppress. Take anti-nausea medication. Force it down. Keep eating so you're not hungry. Push through to finish the task. And that effort often pushes the body far beyond its original limit. Science calls this early interference with a protective reflex. Once the vomiting center has been activated, blocking it does not make the problem disappear. It only forces the body to find another way to release the pressure. Headaches, dizziness, diarrhea, a racing heart, or a deep exhaustion that lingers for hours afterward. Some people say they successfully stop themselves from vomiting, but in exchange, they spend the whole night unable to sleep, head heavy like stone, stomach aching quietly. Biology is very fair. If energy is not released in one way, it will find another path. Another very concrete example: motion sickness. You haven't eaten much. The food isn't spoiled. But when your eyes see one kind of movement while the inner ear senses another, the brain falls into conflict. From an evolutionary perspective, this conflict once signaled poisoning. The brain doesn't wait for modern scientific reasoning. It activates the old reflex. Vomiting becomes the safest option. What's interesting is this: when you get off the vehicle, stand still and breathe deeply. The nausea often fades, not because you are stronger, but because the signal conflict has been resolved. The body has been returned to the conditions it needs. The key insight is here. The body is not fighting you. It is fighting an incompatible context. We live in a world that is very good at creating contexts that biology isn't designed for: eating quickly while doing heavy mental work, sitting still while the mind is under stress, using stimulants to push through fatigue, then blaming the body when it reacts. Vomiting is one of the rare moments when biology takes back absolute control. It says, "I am stopping this now," whether you want to or not. And if you pay close attention, you'll notice that after episodes of vomiting not caused by illness, many people naturally change their behavior. They eat more slowly, drink less carbonated soda, avoid intense movement after meals, go to bed a little earlier, not because anyone taught them, but because the body just taught them through direct experience. That's why primitive reflexes like vomiting, pain, and fatigue never disappear from humanity. No matter how advanced medicine becomes, they are the final language when more subtle warnings have been ignored. If you're listening to this and recognize yourself in some of these examples, remember one very important thing. Vomiting is not a story about the stomach. It is a story about rhythm. And perhaps the question worth keeping is not, how do I never vomit? But how do I live so that my body no longer has to use its roughest method just to be heard? That is a question many people only begin to ask after they're already holding the bucket. Vomiting is not a failure of the digestive system. It is the final alarm when all the gentler signals before it have been ignored. Before the body forces you to bend over, it has already tried many other ways. A feeling of fullness, but you keep eating. Mild nausea, but you keep working. Deep exhaustion, but you force yourself to stay awake. Vomiting appears only when biology no longer believes you will stop on your own. The frightening part is not the moment of throwing up. The frightening part is this: you can live for a very long time in a state of not bad enough to vomit. You can still go to work, still function, still laugh and talk, but the recovery system is slowly draining. Bit by bit, vomiting is the moment the body takes back the right to decide. No negotiation, no permission, no waiting. And if there is only one insight you should carry with you after this video, it is this: the body does not betray you. It simply stops enduring on your behalf. When it is still whispering, you still have choices. When it makes you vomit, the choices are already gone. If you have ever experienced a moment like that, no need to explain. Just leave a dot in the comments. That is how you tell your body, this time, I listened. And perhaps that is what real recovery truly looks like.